In today's Middle East, deep political and religious divisions are fueling insurgencies and proxy wars. One key driver of this instability is the 1400-year-old sectarian split between Sunni and Shiite Muslims that goes back to the origins of Islam. The group that would become Shiites wanted the Prophet Muhammad's son-in-law, Ali, to succeed him. The group that would become Sunnis favored the Prophet's father-in-law, Abu Bakr. Today, Sunnis make up about 90% of the world's 1.6 billion Muslims. Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Syria, and most of the oil-rich Gulf states are overwhelmingly Sunni. On the other hand, the Persian nation of Iran is the heartland of the Shiite world, and the Arab countries Iraq and Bahrain have majority Shiite populations. There are a couple exceptions to this idea that countries are overwhelmingly dominated by Shiites or Sunnis. Lebanon, for instance, has about equal numbers of Shiites and Sunnis in its population. Bahrain is a majority Shiite country but is ruled by a Sunni. In Syria, a majority of the population is Sunni, but the country is ruled by an Alawite, which is an offshoot of Shiite Islam. The two main regional rivals in the Sunni-Shiite split are Saudi Arabia and Iran. Let's look at how these two countries compare and compete for supremacy and influence around the Middle East. Saudi Arabia looks to its ally, the United States, for military protection. Iran, on the other hand, has a large military and intelligence service of its own and is often active on foreign soil. Saudi Arabia is ruled by a king, whereas Iran is ruled by a cleric. Both countries vie for influence through the use of proxies. Saudi Arabia typically backs Sunni leaders as well as rebels fighting against Shiite interests. Iran backs Hezbollah in Lebanon and Palestinian militant group Hamas in Gaza. Both countries' economies are built on oil. Three countries are in the midst of major Sunni-Shiite proxy wars: Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. Let's look at Iraq first. It's a country with a majority Shiite population. Its former ruler was the Sunni dictator Saddam Hussein, but the country is now ruled by Shiites, although pockets are controlled by the Sunni extremists ISIS. Iran has backed Iraq's new Shiite leaders. Saudi Arabia, though, is not happy that Iraq is now controlled by Shiites. Iran is helping the government fight ISIS. Saudi Arabia also sees ISIS as a threat. Iran has military advisors inside the country. Saudi Arabia is worried, though, about growing Iranian influence, and it's joined the US-led coalition against ISIS and is hoping the US will be more active inside Iraq and help keep Iran at bay. Now let's go to Syria. The country has a majority Sunni population, but it's ruled by Bashar al-Assad, who's an Alawite, which is an offshoot of Shiite Islam. Syria has been going through an ongoing civil war. Sunnis and extremist groups like ISIS are vying to push Assad out of power. Iran is openly backing the Assad regime. Saudi Arabia supports Sunni rebel efforts to topple Assad. Iran is backing proxies like Hezbollah to aid in the fight against that mostly Sunni-driven uprising. The situation is equally complicated in Yemen. The country is 65% Sunni, and its Sunni president was pushed out by Shiite rebels called the Houthis. Sunni extremists al-Qaeda are also vying with the Houthis and the government for control of the country. Iran is backing the Houthis in its efforts to control the country, but Saudi Arabia, along with other Sunni nations, is launching airstrikes against the Houthis to prevent them from taking over. Iran, not surprisingly, is highly critical of those military strikes, but Saudi Arabia wants to make sure that Yemen, which is right on its border, is ultimately and securely ruled by a Sunni. Two strands of Islam splintered off into many deadly alliances. It's a highly volatile geopolitical cauldron with seemingly no end in sight.